Broadcasting live from the IRSMedic studios, it's Parental Advisory.
What do you have? Oh, that's not plugged in. That's gonna hurt us.
Well, they can still hear you even though you can't hear them, Anthony. Welcome to Parental Advisory. Today, you're plugged in now?
Oh, we were live.
Yeah.
Hey, no kidding. Well, that's fantastic.
It is. That'll go on our blooper reel. It'll be the first one without a swear word in it. Today, we want to talk about PFICs.
PFIC is the correct way to pronounce this horrible thing, not PFIC, which is just,
That makes it even worse.
Yes.
Duh.
Yep.
PFIC.
Yeah, that's just.
It's a PFIC.
Yes.
And it is craziness, PFIC
Yes.
Craziness. And we're going to try to be a little more general today because PFICs can get really in depth.
Right. I mean, this is I think a challenging. This is basically Evel Knievel trying to jump Snake Canyon. If we can make PFIC somewhat entertaining, I think we will have surpassed with no broken bones too.
Yes.
That will be really amazing. So if we can keep this entertaining, somewhat,
and
a little bit of information in there, but we're not going to be going over the technical. There's some other horrible things in there, like
we'll get.
I'll just say. Well, all right.
Okay. Well,
can I say it?
Can you wait until I explain what a PFIC is? I mean, let's start with the basics, man.
Right.
Okay. Passive foreign investment companies. And this even is a little weird. Mm-hmm. They either have half their assets in foreign passive income producing assets, which is the asset test, or get a majority of their income from foreign passive sources. That's the income test.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, so we got a little crazy there. Here, this is what the IRS is trained on: foreign mutual funds.
Yes,
that's all they say. They did just say the IRS because sometimes when we're looking at something, we'll look back because it's not a mutual fund. We're like, wait a second, because when we say it's an we're always we want to know ahead of time before we take on a case if there's a PFIC. But sometimes they erupt, and sometimes they're hidden inside something that is a life insurance, but it's not.
Mm-hmm. So it is. It's basically like a foreign version of a mutual fund.
Right.
Generally.
Right.
From my research, it looks like they're not the best investment, but we know that wasn't always the case. Offshore mutual funds were originally better than domestic funds with higher returns and lower costs.
Right.
But then we go to our strong lobby argument.
Right. Well, and in the offshore, and that was the problem. The offshore doesn't have to deal with the SEC, which is sort of an antiquated regulatory system. The Securities Act of 1933, 1934. Those are what we have on the books, and they're just stupid. I mean, they're ridiculous. But it's there, and everybody feels like we need it, but it's not really. I mean, it's some of the there's a lot of genius ideas. And I'm going to say that with quotes, genius ideas out of the New Deal. And this was one of them, the SEC. And it's just people who didn't know what they're doing, just sort of getting around and just, I think they were drunk, probably drunk, goading themselves into, no, this is a great idea. And I mean, they did some really, they had some really dumb ideas that just fail common sense. In the New Deal, they ordered mass slaughter of livestock, like pigs. They went and they would go to farms. They dig a big ditch, push the pigs over alive into the ditch and bury them dead.
What?
Yeah.
You're making that up.
No, I am not. No, there's a lot of horrors of FDR. I mean, he was a horrible person who was really crazy. A big fan of Hitler, by the way. Big fan of Hitler. Big fan. He was a big fan of all the statists around the world. He was smarter than everybody else. He knew better than everybody else. And so that was the idea. Because the problem of the Great Depression was caused by prices being too low. So if you reduce the supply of pigs that were produced, then that would increase the price of pigs, which is good, I guess. But you're like, there's a lot of people starving who could have
eaten those things.
I mean, it's kind of horrific what
pigs.
You buried pigs alive. What the hell is wrong with you? And it doesn't get any play.
Right.
But I mean, I think that's the context of when you look at some of these laws, think about who the geniuses were behind them, and that they were really, these people, the religion is the state. That is what it is. They're like, oh yeah, we know everything. We're not going to let individuals decide because we are so smart. Our little group, our group of 5 or 6 people who like to get together and drink. We're so smart. We know better than everybody. We know better than individual actors, and that's what you're dealing with. Is people who won't let the market work.
Right.
These are the things that get in the way of the market. And so this is what you had. So people went outside the market of the U.S. to say, well, I'm going to invest in a foreign mutual funds because they don't have your stupid, ridiculous compliance costs that don't do me any good. It's like these foreign mutual funds. It's like, well, what was their default rate? How many people ripped off? Nobody. No, nothing different. So I'll just go there because it's better. I don't, they're getting a better rate of return.
Now, the strongest lobby that would fight this is obviously...
Yeah, domestic Wall Street doesn't like that though, right? I mean, those are a lot of Wall Street jobs saying, wait a second there.
We could make more money if we could make this more complicated for them. They made the funds less attractive by making the accounting associated with them numbingly time-consuming.
Yeah, and even in simple cases... it's terrifying. And then in complicated cases, it's just beyond what you should require of a human.
So the return on it is not going to even pay for the accounting costs.
And then there's also your numbers could always be challenged pretty much because when you're doing these, you're making educated guesses a lot of times on a lot of, you're like, okay, well, I'm going to, and you'll just go with your mythology to say, well, I'm going to be consistent in my educated guesses, and that's your best bet. But somebody in the IRS says, well, no, you have this all wrong. So, what you have as a barrier to that is very few people in the world understand this, and that includes people at the IRS. So they don't know. A lot of times we'll go through an audit and they're like, you guys missed all these PFICs left and right. You didn't even see them.
Oh, wow.
And then you're saying, they're PFIC, what?
Okay.
Foreign mutual fund. The PFIC thing. Yes.
So what we know is if you hold a U.S. incorporated fund, you're going to pay the low long-term capital gains rate of 15%. If it's held for more than a year.
Well, now it's 20.
Oh,
now
it
it's
is?
20. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
If you bought a virtually identical fund listed outside the U.S., it would result in both income and capital gains being classified as income and would be taxed at 39.6, but potentially over 50%.
Yeah, and there's also some other plus on that 20% now. We have our Medicare surcharge of 0.09% that may kick in. And well, actually, no, it shouldn't be on that, but your net investment income tax of 3.8. Yes.
There's a lot of numbers to remember.
A lot of numbers, yeah. That might go on when your AGI goes over $250,000. So it used to be a lot better, but still, that's less than that 39.6%.
Right. The losses can't be used to offset gains in non-PFIC investments.
And that is absolutely horrifying, too. This is just a complete screwing because you can have losses, and the IRS says, yeah, but those aren't losses. It's like, well, what happened to the beauty of the code? What happened to the integrity of the code? What's the reason why? Tell me the reason why, because there should be at least some colorable claim for truth and justice, right? There has to be some idea why we're not going to do that. It's like there's no other reason except this was a gift to Wall Street. And by the way, it wasn't FDR who signed that. That was in the it was
Reagan.
It was Reagan, 1986. Now, I'm just going to say Ronnie didn't see it there. He it was a big code, a lot of things, or, hey, look, that was a deal he had to make with Tip O'Neill to get it through, so that's at least the story I'm going to stick with. He didn't know. He wasn't there, just like Iran-Contra. Ronnie would never do anything. He's an American hero.
We also know gains are taxed annually, but on U.S. mutual funds, the tax is deferred indefinitely until realized through sale.
And this is, so what you're doing is you're always, they get really the best of both worlds, all worlds, not even both worlds, okay? But so they get to tax you at the IRS gets to tax you at a higher income. They tax you when you have a gain. They won't let you write off the loss. And it's that year and every year. Ugh. It's just everything is wrong about it. There's nothing right about it. And it's pure political power. And this is, if you were really trying to do something, if you're really trying to get your favors, this is where you stick everything in the tax code. Obamacare is in the tax code for a reason. Because nobody, as soon as you put it in the tax, no one's going to read it. Very few people like, oh, God.
Yeah.
And we'll be talking, I think we're going to have to eventually talk about Obamacare.
Right.
God, I'm getting dumber by the minute thinking about it.
I've been putting it off.
I know, right? I think everybody is there. Like, do we really have to talk about it?
So what we know is generally PFICs aren't a great investment, and you can usually find a U.S. equivalent of the mutual fund that you're looking at.
Yes, and that's true because sometimes we'll look at a client will come in, they'll give us here are my statements, and I'll see it, and I'll see awesome, it's a U.S. fund. I'm looking, it's a U.S. name, but then we put it in there like it's actually the same fund but foreign.
Oh, crud.
And now your taxes went from this to this. And again, this is the thing. It's how do you explain how do you get the public concerned about this? We just lost them at the word PFIC. We just lost them there. So the only people who really care are the people who are actually getting hit by it. I mean, I don't know how. I mean, that's what I'm trying to do is make other people say this is screwed up, and that the IRS is always screwing someone in a non-obvious way, in a non-obvious manner, so that there never becomes a overwhelming objection to them. The IRS is never going to audit more than, now they're down to 1% of people, and it's always self-employed. If you want to, if they went and audited more people every year, really spread that misery around, you'd have an upheaval. But people for most years, you're kind of safe. You're all right, I don't get caught.
Right.
It's not going to happen. So that is, my wife is calling me for lunch. We didn't put the sign. Yeah, we didn't put the sign up. There we go. Yes.
Well, you know what? I think you bring up a good point that what we're trying to do is basically educate people on how screwy the IRS is and the whole system. And I think we just keep doing what we're doing, try to bring attention to it and keep talking about it. We did a whole 3-part series on tax issues that expats can run into. Check out IRSMedic.com for that series. And this is another trap they could sort of easily fall into. So you're a U.S. citizen working overseas, and either your buddy recommends an investment, or you go to work and the company says, here's some things we recommend, and you think, oh, the company recommended it.
And it will probably be some really sharp guy from the UK.
Yeah.
He's going to be charming. He's going to really know his investments. He's going to show you returns. You're going to be really impressed by him. So he's going to give you this here, get into this, get into this. Well, that UK guy doesn't have any of this to worry about. If he's an expat, he doesn't have to report. That doesn't even go on his returns. So not only is he not taxed on it, he's not taxed on it at this horrible sort of regime. So when you're taking investment advice, they might be 100% true if you had the same tax regime that you fell under.
Yes.
But when you do not, you need something that's going to give you such a monumentally higher return than you would have otherwise to overcome the compliance costs, because guess what? It works. Because people come in, we're like, okay, look, this is a lot of work we have to do. We have to create these incredibly intricate income statements to show, what it is. And then when there's trades involved, when you're trading mutual funds, oh my freaking God. Oh my God, it's just terrible. And that's where I got into this, was in 2009 with one of my first OVDI cases. It was a managed broker account overseas, and we put everything on Schedule D originally, and it was we were just treating it as just like long-term capital gain, short-term capital gain, and then the auditor, who's I really like her, really sharp. She just said, "Hey, have you heard about those PFIC things?" I'm like, "I did remember reading something. I just know it's really screwed up." "Yeah, you have PFICs here." And I was like, okay.
I guess now I'll learn about PFICs.
And so I spent, because she was learning it too. She was learning it too as we were going along. Mm-hmm. And the issue is that there's just information you don't quite have. So there's no way to calculate it. And I'm not going to go into the horribly boring details why, but you're guessing on a lot of things. You're trying to make educated guesses, and you're tracking back things when you just don't have the original amounts. So during this, and we didn't finish the case until the IRS came out with some so-called simplified rules to make a mark-to-market election. And with that, we were able to complete it, because otherwise there really wasn't going to be a way. Mm-hmm. So I'm thinking our case helped them come up with the new way. And that was just my trial by fire into PFICs, and one of the first disclosures with them. And a lot of other people during that had the same thing. And so we're all, the IRS is like, we're overwhelmed here. I mean, and that's, again, this is the woman I was dealing with that was so bright, and she's still there. I'm like, man, you should be running like a Fortune 500 company. I mean, if you were running a Fortune 500 company, if you were in control, that thing would be running all right. And it's like, you're so good.
Yeah.
And I know you like your job here, I think, but man, you would be better deployed in the private sector and
using your smarts.
Yeah.
And it used to be easier to sort of hide PFICs.
Yeah, well, you hide everything was easier,
yeah.
right?
But now with FATCA,
that's now it's very difficult.
And when you're reporting on these investments, again, we won't get too technical. You do need a separate Form 8621 for each PFIC that you own. The calculations are where it gets extremely technical. Standard OVDP, streamlined, and then within those, there's different categories.
Oh, I get to say my horrible, what do you call that acronym?
Okay, let's hear it.
QUEF.
And what does QUEF stand for?
All right, I'll just say it. We're not going to get into it.
Okay.
But it's a different, instead of a mark-to-market, you could do a qualified electing fund? Election fund?
Electing fund.
Electing. QUEF.
QUEF. Okay, so there's mark-to-market and QUEF. So lots of words here we're throwing around that may not mean a lot to you, and I think it would be impossible for the average Joe to do this sort of accounting on their own.
And even more, higher than average Joe. Even, someone really
CPAs.
Qualified. Right. No, it's hard. It's really hard, and not to say that you can't do it, but just the amount of attention and energy, the psychic energy that goes into getting these things done, it's just such a waste. And that's sort of the thing. It's did it drop when I said psychic?
Yes.
What did I tell you?
I know.
What did I tell you? Oh, our foam pad in the back dropped in the background for those listening to audio only, right as I said psychic. Weird.
So you also wanted to give it a shout out. We've got at least two blogs on IRSMedic.com that do get into the really technical information if you are so inclined to read those. And there was also another.
Yeah, there's a law firm, and I didn't participate in it, but a bunch of my staff members did. HodgkinsLaw.com, I believe, is what they said it was. And they said these guys are really putting out some great information out there on PFICs, and so that might be a source to look at. So we haven't done the in-depth one right now. Just we're doing them a lot, so it takes a lot of time to actually do it. We might get our own out there, put it on IRSMedic. I hope to do that, but every day we just get it goes on tomorrow's list.
Tomorrow's list.
Yeah.
This surprised me, and correct me if I'm wrong. Failure to file such a form in a year in which no income is properly reported doesn't carry specific penalties. I don't know. That just surprised me. The IRS just seems penalty happy.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. There's not a form. Yeah. There's no failure to file that form.
Okay.
Right. There isn't a penalty. Like with 5471, $10,000 a year.
Right.
Penalty.
Yeah,
that's for
really
foreign
surprised.
corporations.
What it's going to do is make the return technically incomplete, and that could subject the taxpayer to tolling of the statute of limitations.
And we talked about statute of limitations for expats, but that was on collections. This is the statute of limitations on assessment. Once you file a return, in most cases, okay, and there's going to be some exceptions. In most cases, the IRS has 3 years in which to assess an additional tax from the date of that filing, okay, from when it's filed.
Yep.
But when you don't file your 8621, like when you don't file your Form 5471 or 3250A for foreign life insurance, that time is indefinite. That means they can kind of go back forever. And what's bad about forever is that when they go back that amount of years, that all that interest is running, and we showed an example of how $15,000 of unpaid tax in 1996 can transform into over $50,000 in 2016. And so that's the problem about when the IRS goes back this far. And it's also the problem when we're doing a full OVDP because we're going back 8 years. So they get all that interest and that additional tax through the PFIC regime for that 8 years back.
Ugh.
So it's disgusting and nasty. And I don't think anyone should cover themselves with pride who is a part of this. It's I think, and that's one of maybe that's one of my outrages about this, is everybody at the IRS is just doing their job. Everybody at Congress is just doing their job. Yet we end up with something so completely evil. This is evil. There's no way around it. This is confusing to begin with, that it takes not only a tax professional, but an extremely specialized and extremely talented tax professional, and probably a team, really. If you want your best result, you probably want a team of people who are going to be working on it to get it done correctly. And if you don't get it done correctly, watch out. And by the way, you actually can't fully delegate all responsibility to somebody who is qualified, because you are ultimately responsible. But we just discussed how it's impossible for you to know what you're signing. But the code says you signed your return. You said you understood it all. Yeah, I didn't have a choice, because if I don't sign the return, then it doesn't count as a return, and I could be prosecuted for willful failure to file a tax return. So this is not how it should be. And yet nobody is responsible for this evil. It's all, I was just doing my job.
Yeah.
And so, I think it's just, this is what needs to be exposed, is that the end result is evil. So how does this happen step by step by step? And everyone's just focusing on their one thing.
The end result is crushing the taxpayer's soul.
Right. And it does.
Yeah.
And we laugh about it, but it's true. It absolutely does. And now you're forcing someone, well, I had this here, but now I'm going to force them to sell it off and buy this. So you're making them buy from your buddy. Mm-hmm. You squelched that deal and made them buy from your buddy. That's theft. That's just complete theft. It's dishonest.
Yep.
It's disgusting. And it's right there, Section 1291, right? 26 USC 1291. This is where we start to get into our PFICs. And just, just a completely, this is just one of the ones that I think really demonstrates sort of the hidden evilness and how well it hides itself.
Absolutely.
It's there. It's hiding in plain sight. It's right there. It's part of the tax code. And you read it, it makes as little sense as any other part of the tax code. But its impact is just so significant, and its costs are paid by such a few who just hit this third rail. Not even a third rail. There's got to be a better analogy, because a third rail you could see. Mm-hmm. Maybe, and it's known as a third rail. This is just a completely hidden, this is a completely hidden trap. They dug, they dug a well for you to fall into, and they covered it over.
And they put a tiger in the bottom.
Right. And because, we wanted you to, and at the bottom, the tiger says, oh, yeah, you should have invested domestically. I'm going to eat you now. Yeah. By the way, invest domestically. Thanks for coming.
All right. So I have two questions for you then about PFICs. Why would anyone knowingly invest in these?
Yeah. You would just have to have a really big return. If you are, some of them, sometimes the accounting won't be so horrific, depending on what it is. Otherwise it's just something we're not commenting on the underlying investment. We're just saying from a tax strategy, it's not the greatest thing in the world. One of the things you need to do with any tax strategy is you need to defer your gains, or you need to have something that takes advantage of something. Here, you're getting just the worst possible treatment. They're taxed at the highest tax rate, and losses aren't really recognized.
So if you own a PFIC that hasn't been properly reported, or if you just own a PFIC in general, would you recommend selling it?
Yeah, for a tax purpose, yes. Okay, I'm not talking about. I'm not an investment advisor. I'm saying from a tax purpose, yes. And then people's like, well, I have, but I don't want to have to realize a capital gain. Well, that's the thing about PFICs. You got screwed on your capital gain. You've been paying it, so that's the one thing. You could sell it, and there's really no taxes due because you've already paid it all. There's no deferral. You haven't been getting any deferrals, so it makes sense to get rid of it and get something else, get the same fund that's U.S.-based. That also, and then that's what's funny, is that the U.S.-based fund could be an international fund.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah, and it doesn't count as a PFIC.
Yeah.
You're like, wait, I bought the Euro fund, some Euro fund.
Oh, my God.
Right?
That's crazy.
So because that's the thing. It's okay for Wall Street to invest overseas. But you as an individual is just, that's immoral. That's not right. I mean, that's just, not cool at all. As long as Wall Street gets their taste, it's fine. If you cut them out, no. We have ways of dealing with you.
Now, we're not an investment company, but we have learned some different deferral strategies for investments. We talked about PPLIs.
Yep. Private placement life insurance for higher net worth people.
Yep.
And that has a lower cost ratio of what you're going to be paying. You can get it down to lower than 1%. Which is pretty good. When you go to something that's not private, you're going to have a higher amount, maybe like a 2%. That's kind of going to commissions and costs. So when you look at that compared to, say, what a mutual fund will have, the costs are higher as a percentage. But when you look at the overall what you end up at the end of the day, that's where it starts to make a little bit more sense. And then also there is estate tax issues too. So that's really one of the things I have. If you can't get into a 401k with what you're looking to do, if there's not a traditional tax deferral strategy available for you, that's when I think you start to look at insurance as that investment, or perhaps a private placement variable annuity as well is another one for those who are not quite insurable. That's another way that they can get into that.
That's good to know. So I think what we learned today is PFICs are not a good investment. Generally.
Well, wait. We're not going to say.
Okay,
that's
true. The
PFICs as we have no opinion on the PFICs as an investment. I have none. I have no opinion on whether it's a good investment. But I can tell you that their tax treatment can diminish their investment values.
Well said.
There you go.
Said like an attorney. It depends. Thanks for listening to Parental Advisory. Thanks for joining Parental Advisory, hosted by Anthony Parent, produced by Claudine Gindel, that's me, engineered by Chris Chen. For more podcasts, visit our website at parentaladvisoryshow.com and like us on Facebook to submit story ideas. We'd like to thank our sponsors, IRSMedic.com, the law offices of Parent, and Wynn, LLP, real tax attorneys for tough tax problems.